Okay, let me check that the board is clear. It's clear-ish. I've got a little bit of glare right here. Try and pull that around a bit. 1 second. That's a little bit better, isn't it? Well, I'll try and just turn it off, see if that works. Yeah, that's much better. We've got a lot of sunlight today anyway. It's quite a sunny day here. It's actually cooled down a little though in the last, well, especially this morning. It was much colder. We had a lot of dew on the grass. It seems that autumn has already arrived at the end of August. So hello, without further ado, let's get started with these phrasal verbs. Let's get down to business. So, chapter 26, prop up. You'll notice that many of these phrasal verbs are now being repeated. These phrasal verbs crop up in every chapter. They're repeated. They crop up again and again and again. So please use that phrasal verb, crop up. It's a good one. Now, if you prop something up, I used the example that I propped up some parts of this ceiling when I was making this log cabin, and I used a piece of wood to prop up the ceiling while I put the insulation up. In fact, I was propping up the insulation. That's what I was doing. I was propping up the insulation while I put a wooden board up to keep the insulation in place. So prop up means to hold up in place. You can also shore things up or shore the economy up with financial measures, with fiscal measures. Sounds very good. And you can say that the recent fiscal measures have been buoying up the economy. So these two came cropped up in a previous lesson. But yeah, you prop up things by basically providing support and making sure that they stay up in the air. Okay, if you see about doing something, and yeah, you could see about any task or errand that you have to do. I'll see about getting the grass cut. I'll see about having the car repaired. And it means to get someone to, well, to deal with a certain task or errand, to sort out a task or errand. And it involves maybe calling out the plumber or something like that. If you're seeing about getting the boiler fixed, you'll need to call out the plumber. And so see about, it basically means sort out a task or sort out an errand. And you could also say, well, we'll see about that. And that would mean, let's wait and see. We'll see whether that's true or not true. So it could be used in a couple of different ways, see about. But see about certainly means to deal with a task or an errand and get it sorted out. Questions, please ask them under the video. Otherwise it will stop me explaining these phrasal verbs. So if something doubles up as something else, it means it can be used as something else as well. So maybe you don't have any pillow on your bed and you decide to use your jumper, which will double up as a pillow. Your jumper doubles up as a pillow. Your plate may double up as an ashtray. If you don't have an ashtray, you might decide to use your plate instead. Then your plate will be doubling up as an ashtray. Now, if you round people up, you gather them together for some kind of purpose, for some kind of project. So you might need to round people up in order to get a football team together, in which case you might say, I wanted to rope in a few friends. But remember that rope in is slightly different, because round up just means gather people together. So if you're in a big crowd of people, you can start speaking, maybe with a loudspeaker, to round them up into a group so that you can start talking to them. So round up just means gather people together. Rope someone in means it's like a lasso. It's like a cowboy with a lasso. It's very visual phrasal verb, this one. And you rope people in when you need to find people, maybe for your football team, but maybe for something else. Maybe you have an English practice group and you want to rope in some other people. It means that maybe you've got only 3 people and you want to rope 4 more people in. And it just means get those people also in the group. But I think it's similar to round up a group because you're still gathering people together. But rope in is for a specific purpose. Maybe your English group, maybe your football team, maybe it could be absolutely anything. Maybe there's a work outing going on and there aren't enough people going yet. You have some places left in on the coach and you want to rope a few more people in to participate. Okay, sift through has come up before. It cropped up in another lesson. When you sift through the rubbish, it means you've dropped something in the bin that you shouldn't have and you want it back, so you sift through the rubbish. But you could also sift through documents. If you have hundreds and hundreds of documents lying on your desk, I've got quite a few over there, you might decide to sift through them. I try not to sift through them because a lot of them are immensely boring, bills, that kind of stuff. But you sift through documents, you're looking through them, maybe you're even poring over them, but poring over sounds like you're examining them, you're scrutinising them, whereas sifting through sounds like you're just looking through them, maybe not very carefully when you're sifting through. But sifting through rubbish, you're certainly looking through it carefully, but the idea is that you're doing this. But you can sift through the belongings in your bag. You know, if you've got one of those bags that's full of all sorts of stuff, you might sift through the stuff to find what you need. But you could also rifle through the stuff. You could also rummage through your possessions. The customs officers often rummage through your possessions. They often rifle through your suitcase if they think that you might look a bit suspicious. Okay, if you hoard stuff away, this is quite a negative phrasal verb because it sounds like you're being mean. A squirrel will hoard away its nuts. Its acorns. Whatever it's found to eat, maybe nuts if people are throwing them nuts, they will hoard those nuts away or those acorns away. And it means they find a hole where they keep that treasure, and a hoard is sometimes called a treasure. Sometimes we say that the pirate has a hoard, meaning of treasure, in a certain location. A pirate will hoard away his treasure. He'll stash it somewhere. He'll hide it somewhere. So hoard away, it's normally used to mean that someone's being quite mean and that they're keeping, maybe they're hoarding away food. They're keeping that hidden from everybody else so that nobody else can find it. Maybe they're hoarding away their money. They're keeping their money hidden so that nobody else can find it and that it's all for them. So I suppose we all hoard away something or other. We all have something that we don't want anybody else to find and that we keep secret or hidden for ourselves. But yeah, it has this idea of you normally hoard away treasure or food or something useful that other people want and you don't want to let them have, so you stash it away, you hide it away. A little bit like hide away or stash away. Now if you do up your coat, you're zipping it up. If you do up your shoes, you're tying them up. So very similar to tie up and zip up, but if you do up your flat, then you're jazzing up your flat, you're decorating your flat. You might even say you're sexing it up, although that's unlikely. Normally something else would be sexed up, maybe a document, maybe an article. All articles in the newspaper are sexed up. Most of them aren't true, obviously. They're just exaggerations, they're just sexed up articles they're trying to round up as many readers as possible, and so of course they have to lie, they have to exaggerate, they have to play up the story, they have to sex it up to make it interesting because it's actually quite boring. Now be geared towards. These lessons are geared towards phrasal verbs. In particular, these lessons are geared towards students who have the Advanced Phrasal Verbs book, and it's available online. You can download it for free like everybody else does, and if you look at this book, it's got hundreds and hundreds of exercises with these phrasal verbs. So if you want practice, get that book. It's by Felicity Odell and Martin McCarthy or something like that. You'll find it anyway, Advanced Phrasal Verbs Cambridge. Now if you rank among, this is usually used with rank among the best of. If you say that writer ranks among the best writers in Europe, it means that he's one of the best, yeah? It means that you are in that rank. And a rank is, of course, a position in society. It's a hierarchical position in society. If you have a rank in the army, it might be private, it might be captain, it might be general. These are all different ranks in the army. And if you rank among, very often used for sportsmen, really, you can say he ranks among the best tennis players in Wales, or something like that. Okay, if you fix up a meeting, you arrange a meeting, you sort out a meeting. Okay, so fix up, it means arrange or sort out. It doesn't mean repair here, it really does just mean arrange. So fix up a meeting with the boss, sort out a meeting with the boss. What have I put stack up there for? Okay, stack up a pile of something. If you stack up a pile of books, it means you put one book on top of the other. If you stack up the chairs, you put one chair on top of the other. Maybe the meeting's finished and somebody goes round and stacks up all the chairs. So it's about arranging things, and all of these words are about arranging things in some way, arranging objects in a room. Now, if you round up a number or round down a number, this is in mathematics when you have 9.75 and you round it up to 10, or you have 8.13 and you round it down to 8. But what you're doing here is rounding off the numbers. You're either rounding it up or down, and you can just say in a general way, I had to round off the number. It just means make it a whole number, basically make it a reasonable number or an easy to count number. Okay, if things add up, it could mean that things are building up. It could be similar to build up, which is down here. Don't need to write it again. You could say that all of that junk food that he's been eating, it means that all the calories have been adding up, meaning all the calories have been building up. They've been increasing in number. But it also means make sense. If you say, I'm sorry, but things don't add up. It means, I'm sorry, but things don't make sense. There's something illogical here. Something doesn't add up. Something doesn't make sense. Add up to, it could be used in a money way, where you say the beers and the sweets and the wine add up to £15. Or it could be used to mean or signify. So you might say, what with his behaviour at school and his low marks, we can see that all of these things add up to problems at home. All of these things signify that he has problems at home. All of these things mean or indicate. So add up to, it could mean, indicate or signify. It's a second way that it's used, and it's quite common. So you might come to a crime scene and see lots of different clues. You see footprint on the window sill and you notice that the door is closed but it's not locked. And you say, all of these facts add up to the killer coming through the window and leaving through the door. Something like that. Okay, if you say that the quality of some items has been falling off, it means it's been getting worse. The quality has been getting lower and lower. So we can use fall off, meaning to get worse. When we're talking about the quality of something getting worse, we say that perhaps the food in that pub has been falling off recently, and it means the quality of the food has been falling off. Now, if the pub bumps up prices, it means they make the cost of the drinks more expensive. Most of the pubs around here, unfortunately, have bumped up their prices. But if you knock down prices, then you reduce the prices. And if you're a customer, you can knock someone down on the price. So that would be a little bit more. That would be knock someone down on. And that means that you managed to haggle, you managed to negotiate a better price, a cheaper price. Maybe you managed to negotiate a 20% discount. You knock them down on the price by £5. You knock them down on the price by £10. So the seller can knock down the price, or you can knock them down on the price. Put on means put on clothes. It also means put on weight, which in my opinion is similar to put on clothes, but it has a third meaning. And it means that you pretend to do something. If you put on an accent, you mimic that accent. Maybe pretend isn't the right word, but if you put on a German accent when you go on holiday, you are pretending to be German. You're putting on that accent. You're mimicking it in order to sound German. So it's another way we use put on. If something starts to tail off, it starts to decrease. So maybe you could say something like this. This is from the Advanced Phrasal Verbs book. Ice cream sales tend to tail off in winter. Obviously, there's no sun, and so sales of ice cream tend to tail off in winter. They decrease. You could also say that the number of customers starts to thin out, because this one's always used with numbers of people, it seems to me, thin out. Although it might be used with liquids when they become more dilute, when they become more watered down. You might say that the soup is thinning out if it's becoming more watery, although that's rare. But numbers of people or crowds tend to thin out. So after a football match, after a few, when the football match is finished, the crowds immediately start thinning out, meaning they get less and less. There are less and less people there. Okay, if you slim down the business, this is always used with business, it seems to me. You can slim when you're losing weight, but you can also slim down the business, and it means make the business smaller. It means that you're perhaps laying people off, or you're cutting back staff, you're downsizing, you're cutting back staff, maybe because you don't have enough money to pay everybody. But slimming down the business, it means making it smaller, laying people off, making people redundant. Okay, if a graph starts to level off or flatten out, it literally means that what was like this starts to level off. It starts to level off, yeah? It starts to get flat, it starts to flatten out. I mean, both of those are the same, and it means it becomes stable, neither going up nor down. If the price averages out at $1,300, it means that it becomes roughly $1,300. So this one is very similar to level off. You could say the price leveled off at $1,300. The price of gold leveled off at $1,300. Or you could say the price of gold over the last 3 months averaged out at $1,300. That would be very clear then that you're talking about the average of the last 3 months. Okay, if you profit from your gold investment, if you cash in on the price of gold, or if you capitalize on the rising price of gold, it means that you buy some gold and then you sell it when it's worth much more money. So it's a very good thing to do. You might profit from something else. You might profit from Bitcoin. It's another very popular investment at the moment. So if you buy a load of Bitcoins and wait long enough, you might be able to cash in on the rising price. Okay, if you persuade someone to do something, you talk them into doing something. And if you do it successfully, you can say, I won him over. So win someone over, it means persuade, but it's not quite the same as talk someone into doing something, because it's used differently. You talk them into coming to your party. But you just, win someone over is just without that coming to my party. It's just, I won him over. I managed to persuade him to come to my party. I won him over. I brought him round. So win someone over and bring someone round are identical. They're complete synonyms. Now, if you get through, or go through, I forgot to put go up here. If you go through a messy divorce, go through means that you've suffered in some kind of way, that you've experienced a difficult situation. And everybody knows that divorces are not nice situations, and so you would go through a divorce. And if you get through a divorce, you manage to reach the other side, where you're completely divorced, you've got everything down on a contract, you've got everything written down in a contract, concerning all of the ifs and buts and the way you split the house and everything else. You've got through the divorce, you have gone through it, you have finished it. And if you win through something, then that means you've won something in spite of difficulty. So win through, it's often used when you often talk about one of your feelings winning through, or winning out over another emotion. You could say that my anger won out over my compassion, or something like that. But yeah, win through means to win in spite of difficulty. To come through means to manage to successfully finish something in spite of difficulty. And to pull through means to recover from an illness, really, this one. It's recover from an illness, it's get better. So pull through is still, in spite of difficulty, he managed to recover. He pulled through. We didn't think he was going to pull through, but in the end he pulled through. He came through the sickness. Yeah, so all of these mean something similar. And see something through. To see something through to the end means to finish something which is really difficult. So to see something through means not to give up. You didn't give up and say, oh, I can't be bothered with this, it's too hard. You saw it through until you were an expert or a highly skilled person at this particular topic. Now, if you lose out to someone else, this just means you lose against an opponent. It means you have some kind of competition and you lose out to an opponent. So it's a little bit like lose against an opponent. It's pretty similar. There's not much difference between lose out. When you say Manchester United lost out to Chelsea, it means they lost against Chelsea. but it sounds like it's in a tournament or the end of the league competition, something like that. Now, if your plans fall through, they're not successful. Now, this is a little bit confusing because all of these ones kind of mean when you pull through, you're successful, you recover. When you come through something, you're successful. It's difficult, but you get through it, you go through it, you win through. Fall through is the opposite. If your plans fall through, everything's a disaster. Nothing works out. You aren't successful in some kind of way. So hopefully your plans don't fall through. Hopefully they're all successful and you come through any difficulties that you face. Now, if you sail through your exams, you go through them very easily, very quickly, you pass with flying colours. But if you scrape through, then the idea is that you only just pass. You're a borderline pass. And so you only scrape through. You scraped through that exam. If you pull something off or carry something off or bring something off, then you achieve it. You sort it out. You do it well. Again, it's the opposite of fall through. Because if you say, I didn't think we could carry this off, it means I didn't think we could successfully accomplish what we set out to accomplish. I didn't think we could do it, but we managed to carry it off. We managed to pull it off. You could even do this with something simple like a football game. You could say, oh, I didn't think we were going to carry off that game, but in the end, we won through. We beat them, yeah? We beat the other team. We beat our opponents. Okay, so carry something off, pull something off, bring something off. It means successfully accomplish. Now, if you're dealing with timetables, you can often say, I find it difficult to pack in all the lessons into the busy timetable. Yeah, I have to pack in a lot of lessons. Packing can mean simply in your bag. When you pack things in your bag or in your suitcase, you're trying to squash them in, aren't you? You're trying to fit as many things in the suitcase as possible. Well, the same goes for timetables. If you're trying to pack in a lot of meetings or pack in a lot of projects, you're trying to put too much on your plate. You're trying to get as many things into your schedule as possible. I've got a lot of lessons packed in my schedule at the moment, and it's very tiring. It's really it tires me out. It wears me out. Okay, get by means to survive. So if you say, I found it difficult to get by as a student, it means I found it difficult to make ends meet. I found it difficult to survive on the money that I had as a student. Okay, and win out over. It's usually two emotions, and you say one emotion, one out over another emotion. We all have that moment where we vacillate between two positions, where we're not sure which emotion will win, where we feel both love and hate towards the same object. It's a very interesting psychological issue that we very often have. We have feelings of love, positive feelings, and feelings of hate, negative feelings, towards one and the same object. And one feeling will win out over the other feeling in the end. It depends on which one is the strongest. Okay, if you cock something up, botch something up, mess something up, you make a mistake, you make loads of mistakes and it isn't successful. You mess it up, you muck it up as well. It's another one you can use, you muck it up. And there's a few swear words which sound a little bit like muck, which you could also use as well. So anything like that will mean make a mistake, make a mess of something, not successfully manage to do it. So if you mess up the exam, if you cock up the exam, you make a mistake. And this does sound like a rude word, but I assure you it is when you use it on its own. But with cock up, it's not rude. It's not swearing at all. Okay, relationships like marriages, engagements, and just simple romantic relationships can break down. But one of the partners will break off the marriage. One of the partners will break off the relationship, break off the engagement. And you could even say that one country has broken off the international relations with another country. They have broken off relations, they have broken off communication. So yeah, relationships break down, but you break off relationships. Remember that slight difference, because they're very easy to mix up. Yeah, another way where you're messing up in some kind of way, when you're mixing up two things. Now, if you come across something by chance, you run across it, you bump into it, is usually for people. I must say that's usually for people, but You bump into an old friend, but you come across or run across an old gold watch at the market perhaps, and you really like it and you decide to buy it. But you can also come across as, meaning be perceived to be. What I mean is, if you say, I came across rather rude at that party, it means people perceived me to be rather rude. Perhaps you were in a bad mood and you were quite short with people, you didn't really say please or thank you, and you didn't make an effort. You might come across as a little bit rude or a bit aloof, a little bit arrogant, whatever. If you end up or land up or wind up in a certain situation, it means in the end you finish up like that. You wind up like that. So it's all about ending or finishing in a certain way, in a certain position. Could be negative, could be positive. Okay, if you are very, very sick, your friend might say to you, how are you holding up? Or how are you bearing up? Meaning, how are you coping? Are you coping okay? So they're both about coping with something terrible. If someone in your family dies, somebody might say, how are you bearing up? You know, I know you lost someone who was very dear to you recently. How are you bearing up? How are you holding up? They're both very similar. Now, if you are riddled with holes, maybe you've had a gunfight and somebody has shot you hundreds of times, you'll be riddled with holes. But you could also be riddled with disease. You could be riddled with cancer. So this could be used with holes, with disease. It could even be used with other negative things, but it's mainly holes for some reason and disease. Not sure why, but you could say he was riddled with holes, he was riddled with disease, he was riddled with cancer. Now it means just absolutely full of it, unfortunately. So full of holes, riddled with holes. If you safeguard against something, you take precautions against something. So that's all that one means. To safeguard against spreading infection, I always wash my hands. Not necessarily true, but nonetheless, that's the example I'm going to give you. To safeguard against spreading bacteria, I always wash my hands. Now, if you iron out the details of a contract, it means you maybe you bounce around some ideas in a meeting in order to thrash out the details of the contract, in order to make the details of the contract become clear and agree on the details of that contract. So, this comes from ironing, like ironing your shirt. You iron out creases, usually, in a shirt. When the shirt's all, got lines all over it, you need to iron out the creases. So if you iron out the details of the contract, you make all the details of the contract smooth and clear for everybody. So it's often iron out the details of the contract, but it could be iron out some other kind of details, where you make sure that everybody is in agreement about what the details will be. Now, if you smooth things over between two warring parties or between two people who are having an argument, you make things less aggressive between those two camps or two parties or two people. It means that you make sure that things go smoothly between them, that they're no longer arguing. So maybe maybe you're having an argument with your parents and your sister tries to smooth things over between you and your parents. She tries to talk to your parents and explain that he's not so bad, you're perhaps overreacting, and then she comes and speaks to you and explains to you that this is normal, mum and dad should do this, that it's not such a bad thing. Now, if you make up for something, make up for your mistake, for example, then you compensate for your mistake. Anytime you make up for a mistake, you compensate for a mistake. But you can make up for anything. You can say, I want to make up for being so rude to you last night, and so here's a bunch of flowers. Yeah, you're compensating for being rude the previous night, and you're offering that person a bunch of flowers. So you're making it up to them with the bunch of flowers. You're making it up to them. These are both connected, but they're slightly different. Make up for, to compensate. Make it up to someone, to compensate someone, to make them feel better about some kind of bad behaviour or something like that on your part. Now, if you resign yourself to something, it means that you give in and surrender and accept a terrible fate or a terrible position that you have, a bad position. So Maybe you were passed over for promotion. The boss decided not to give you the promotion and decided to give it to one of your colleagues, and you resign yourself to the fact that this happened. It means you accept it and say, okay, que sera, what will be will be. I'm just going to have to accept this difficult situation. Now, if you fall back on someone or resort to someone or turn to someone, it means use that person as a last resort. But it doesn't have to be a person, it could also be something. So you might say he's an alcoholic, he falls back on whiskey whenever he gets upset. Or he likes smoking and he resorts to cigarettes whenever he gets angry. Or turn to can also mean turn to someone for advice. And it's still using them as a last resort, really. You can say, in times of trouble, I turn to my auntie for advice. But you could say, in times of trouble, I fall back on my auntie's advice. I resort to my auntie's advice. So they're all very similar. And I want you to remember as well, make do with when you use something because you've got nothing better to use. It's slightly different, this. So let's come back to the jumper and the pillow. If you've got no pillow, you might make do with your jumper. You might, you know, so here we're back to double up as. Your jumper might double up as a pillow. You might make do with your jumper. And then you won't need to use it. Well, then you've got already a kind of a pillow instead, using your jumper instead. Now, if you clutch or grasp at straws, it means that you're ready to try anything to get out of a desperate situation. You're trying anything that's possible. So it could be that you don't know the answer to the question, and so you decide to just clutch at straws and have a guess. Have some kind of guess which sounds like it might be correct. It could be like that. But yeah, clutch or grasp at straws, it means to use anything you can to get out of a difficult situation. Okay, if you mull over, muse over, turn over, chew over, you think about something for a long time. You turn that dilemma over in your mind. You muse over it in order to come up with the solution to your problem. So lots of things are worth mulling over. It's good to think about things carefully and for a long time sometimes. And this could be quite positive, it seems to me, to mull over a problem, to muse over something. Churn over, I think, is more negative, although it's very similar. If a problem is churning over and over in your mind, it means it's going around your mind endlessly and repeatedly. And so I think we very often use this one for negative things which we get fixated on, where we have an obsession with something, like a psychological problem, where something is churning over in your mind. Maybe a doubt, maybe a fear, maybe an anxiety or a worry. Okay, if you size someone up, you judge them. You might be sizing them up for their strength. That's possible too. I mean, before two guys start to fight, they square up their shoulders, which means they put their shoulders up to make themselves look big. And then they size up their opponent. They look at their opponent to understand, how big is he actually? Is he bigger than me? Is he going to just punch me and beat me up? So it could be used for strength, but it can also be used for character. And so in the IT Crowd, one of the TV shows that a lot of my students watch, the boss says in the very first scene of the very first episode, I like to size up every new employee with a good long stare. And he means I like to judge them. I like to understand exactly who I've got in front of me by staring at them. Now, if you single someone out, it means that you choose someone from a large group, either for praise or for criticism. It could be either way. So you might say, my teacher singled me out for praise because my spelling test was so good. But you could also say, my teacher singled me out as the worst behaved student in the class. So it basically means to choose one person from the group and then praise or blame that person. If you do someone out of their inheritance, or you cheat someone out of their inheritance, it means that you manage to get their inheritance and you somehow do them out of their inheritance. Maybe you get them to sign a document which gives all of the inheritance to you or something like that, and it's dishonest the way you're operating, then you're doing them out of their inheritance or cheating them out of their inheritance. It could have another noun here, it doesn't have to be inheritance, but it's always when you're being dishonest, if you do or cheat someone out of something. Now, to drum up business, I make YouTube videos for a start. It's one of the ways that I drum up business. But you could also drum up support if you're a politician. You might drum up support by going out and knocking on people's doors. Canvassing, we call that, when you actually knock on people's doors and say, who will you be voting for? Why not vote for me? Okay, if you play on someone's weaknesses, you exploit their weaknesses. But if you play up to your own strengths, you make the most of your own strengths. So I like students to remember, play on the opponent's weaknesses, but play up to our own strengths. Yeah, so I'd like you to play up to your strengths. If you're good at grammar, play up to those strengths. Use a lot of different grammatical expressions and it will add flavour to your language, to your English. But play up to can mean a second thing. It doesn't just mean make the most of. It also means suck up to or butter someone up. This is when you suck up to the boss. Maybe you want to get a promotion, and so you play up to him. You try to please him. You try to flatter him. You try buttering him up with praise, and hopefully he'll give you that promotion. Now, if you play someone off against someone else, this means that you use the competition between two people or the disagreements in order to further your own ends. For example, I always remember the quote here which I wrote on the video, Play Phrasal Verbs, and all of these Play Phrasal Verbs are in my other video on Play Phrasal Verbs. A guy who I'm not very keen on, actually, I don't think he's a very nice person, but a guy wrote about corruption, that all children are corrupt. They play their mother off against their father. And it's absolutely true. As a father myself, I think children do this. They play their mother off against their father, and they play their father off against their mother. It means they use the little conflicts or the little arguments or the disagreements that exist between the mother and the father. They use it to their own advantage. They use it in order to go to bed later. They use it in order to get on the computer when they want to play a computer game. They use the disagreements that the mum and dad have in order to further their own agenda. It's corruption, basically, and I think the writer was just pointing out that human beings are naturally corrupt right from the beginning, and I think he's absolutely right. Now, if you play something up, you over-exaggerate how good something is. If you play something down, you under-exaggerate how good something is. And if you say, let's wait and see how things play out, it means let's wait and see how things happen. Let's wait and see how things finish in the end. Let's wait and see where we end up at the end of everything. Okay, so you might say it in the middle of a football game. Let's wait until the second half to see how... let's wait until the end of the football game to see how things play out. Okay, now's a good time to answer a question. To butt in on someone's conversation. That's a very good question. Yeah, you do butt in on someone's conversation, not butt into conversation. You can barge into a room, barge in, but you barge in on a conversation, or you butt in on a conversation. So that's a very good question, very relevant. So thanks everybody for watching. If you have any relevant questions, put them under the video. Don't understand that, sorry. Please put questions under the video and I'll be delighted to answer them later. Okay, thanks very much. I can't speak when I'm reading your comments, sorry guys. Thanks very much for watching and I hope to see you all soon.